the 1970s. This is Unit 3 and this is Chapter 12. All right, so the 70s is a time period where in the United States we've got political scandal going on, you have economic strain, cultural experimentation. It's really a time period where the national identity is being reshaped. We're coming out of Vietnam. Americans are very upset about Vietnam. There's a growing distrust in the government. You have different type of movements happening. We have the environmental movement, the Native American rights, and then you also have where we're beginning to see social justice movements really gain momentum. And then at the same time, we're still in the Cold War. You have OPEC oil embargoes. You have new type of global vulnerabilities that are starting to take light. So this decade, the 1970s, it's not defined like other decades by just a crisis alone. There's a lot of popular culture that's going to explode, new forms of music, fashion, media. We're going to start getting into disco. You're going to start having different types of blockbuster films. So it's really, along with everything else going on, you start to see society kind of searching for an escape, looking for expression and meaning to kind of bring everything together. So it's very transformative at this time period. All right, so our president at the moment is going to be Richard Nixon. He's the 37th president of the United States. He was the vice president for Dwight D. Eisenhower. So Nixon's presidency is going to be marked by foreign policy achievements. He's going to ease tensions with the Soviet Union. He's going to make some diplomatic relationship happen with China. And he's going to oversee the 1969 Apollo 11 moon landing. Remember, we're still in the space race with the Soviets. But his administration is going to become engulfed, and he is going to only be remembered for the Watergate scandal. And this is going to lead to his resignation and an end of his presidency. So we're going to dig into what all Nixon has going on. He's the president from 1969 to 1974. You can see the different things that fall under his presidency. You'll have Kent State, you'll have the OPEC oil embargo, the Pentagon Papers are a part of Watergate, you have Vietnam, the War Axe Power, and then that last 1973 has to do with the Native American Indians. All right, so in 1969, Nixon is going to create with the Soviet Union a pact to reduce Cold War tensions and hostilities that are going on. So he's going to try and use diplomacy in a way to control arms, the weapons, and improve communication between the two superpowers. So this is going to create, and the purpose of this is he's trying to make sure that we're not going to get like we did with the Cuban Missile Crisis. We're not going to have a nuclear confrontation, and hoping to stabilize all type of global politics during this time period that is just on fire with international competition. And again, we're just coming out of Vietnam, or actually going to come out of Vietnam during this. He's going to help create and move forward environmental movements like Earth Day, the Clean Air Act, and the EPA. That's all going to come about in the 70s. So we're dealing with the United States some turning points as far as being environmentally aware of what's going on our planet. We're going to try and get cleaner air, water, and land. And people, the American people, are finally getting behind all of these environmental protections. So the federal government's going to try to regulate pollution and protect the natural resources on a national scale, a federal scale, versus individually. In 1971, you're going to have the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. That's OPEC. This is led by Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is going to do an oil embargo against the United States in response to the U.S. foreign policy decisions that it's making in the Middle East. The embargo sharply reduces the flow of oil to the U.S. And when that happens, it's going to cause gasoline prices to rise about 35 cents to 55 cents per gallon. You guys would flip if you knew what the prices were at that time, under $1. So this is going to increase widespread fuel shortages. You're going to have long lines at gas stations, and it's going to create a national energy crisis. And that alone is going to reveal how dependent the United States is on foreign oil. Kent State shooting happens May 4th, 1970. This is a protest against the Vietnam War. Kent State University is the place. What happens is you see the crowd of students and they're just protesting the war. Like we talked about before, this generation of college students and young people, that is where all the activism is happening. That's where the civil rights movement is, and everything that they are trying to change and bring to the present that needs to be changed. So what happens at Kent State is you've got these young kids out there protesting against the war. They don't have any guns. They don't have any knives. They're not doing anything, aggressive. And the Ohio National Guard comes out and they start opening fire on the crowd. These are unarmed students. These are 18, 19-year-olds. So the shooting actually kills 4 students and wounds 9 others. Sorry, I'm having problems talking today. And it's going to shock the nation. Remember that everybody's already upset about what they saw about Vietnam on the TV. The government was convincing everybody that they were winning the war. Then with the Tet Offense and with it being aired during the news on TV, the public was actually seeing that that wasn't true. So we're already upset about the Vietnam War and we want our kids back. And then we go and we have a peaceful protest, and the government sends out the National Guards and they open fire on these students who have no weapons, not showing aggression. So this is going to spark a massive cry, a massive anger over the war, what's happening, what the government's doing. And you're going to have college students and universities are going to shut down as demonstration to show that they're not going to, put up with what's going on. And you have Kent State, it becomes this symbol, a powerful symbol for the deep political and social division of this Vietnam era. So, like I said before, it's highlighting this growing mistrust between young Americans and the government. And it is, as far as on the domestic side, the home side, it is one of the defining moments in the anti-war movement. I swear, y'all, I hate that sound. It is driving me crazy. These PowerPoints are not moving along as they need to. I tell you what, kids, these PowerPoints might be the death of me. Like I told you in class, as much as you guys hate listening to them, believe me, I am not having fun doing them. My system is not working well. All right, let's talk about the cars. Okay, so the slide should have probably been moved up. So this is just a visual representation of OPEC when I was telling you that the Saudi Arabia did a blockade of oil, so we can't get any gas, and this is in 1973. You're just seeing massive lines of cars that are lined up to try and get gas. So this slide should actually probably be up further. Okay, we're going to see now if when I push this little button, we go to the next slide, or we hear that god-awful sound saying no. Yay, we went to the next slide. Maybe life's getting better. All right, we have got Nixon still. This is, his call is a silent majority. He has older Americans who did not protest loudly but wanted the country to return to stability during this time period. His policy is going to be called New Federalism, which meant reducing the power of the federal government and giving more control to the state and local governments. He cut federal programs and shifted responsibility to the states. Nixon also promised law and order, because remember, things are going crazy. He would crack down on protesters, draft dodgers. Those are people who avoid the draft and don't go to Vietnam. He wants to limit the rights of people accused of crimes. And he appointed Warren Burger, a conservative judge, to the Supreme Court, which slowed down the expansion of rights for accused persons that had grown earlier in the courts. As far as foreign policy, Nixon's policy was based on realpolitik. It's realpolitik. It's a German word meaning politics based on power, not belief. So instead of focusing on ideology, Nixon made decisions based on what would strengthen the United States, or what he thought would strengthen the United States, to be clear. In 1972, he is going to talk with the Soviet Union, and it's called SALT 1, S-A-L-T 1. What it is strategic arms limitation talks. This is when they're going to discuss who has what missiles, what sites, and where are we going to reduce so that we are lowering the tensions of the Cold War. Nixon introduces the Nixon Doctrine, and this said that Asian allies would still receive U.S. support, but the United States would no longer send large numbers of American ground troops. This is going to lead to reduction of the U.S. soldiers in Vietnam. The other thing that we have from Nixon is the War Power Act, 1973. This is during the Vietnam War that Nixon does this. Nixon secretly had ordered bombing raids in Cambodia, which was a neutral country, not a good country at this time. When Congress learned about this, it passed the War Powers Act in 1973. So this law limited the president's power to use the military without Congress approval. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about this and what's going on right now today. Where is that right now? The goal was to prevent any president from taking any type of major military action in secret. Maybe that's the key, secret. He didn't do it in secret. He did it in front of everybody. Okay. Nixon's domestic and foreign policies reflect his desire to control, and he wants to control and he wants to stabilize and create a very strong national power. What else did I not tell y'all? His main focus is, again, reducing Cold War tensions. He's trying to appease people with the Vietnam War. And then again, everything that he does is going to be brought down with Watergate. Okay, let's get into Watergate. All right, so the first thing is called the Pentagon Papers. And in 1971, this is when it all goes down, a secret government study called the Pentagon Papers. This was leaked to the New York Times. So this government study that was never supposed to get out was given to the New York Times. So the papers explained how the United States had been involved in the Vietnam War for many years and had not always told the truth about what was happening, which again, be thinking about what's going on right now. There's a huge distrust in the government. So, So the papers, they don't blame Nixon personally. Nixon believes that there's inside government people who are trying to hurt him. Because of this fear, he creates a special group to stop the leaks. So basically what is happening is we already have the American public distrusting the government because of what they saw in Vietnam, then what they see with Kent State. You have all this protesting of the younger generation going on. Then someone in the government gives these Pentagon papers that discusses, the different involvement with Vietnam and the different things that were not being told to the people. And so Nixon is worried about all this. So he wants to make sure that there are no more leaks. No one in his government is giving out information to anyone that can be used against him. So he creates a special group to stop the leaks. And this group working for Nixon is called the CREEP, C-R-E-E-P, and the Plumbers. Okay, those are his two groups. So the CREEP, C-R-E-E-P, is Committee to Re-elect the President. And they're going to re-elect the president using any type of dirty tricks, sneaky actions, whatever they have to do to help Nixon win the 1972 election. Okay, so that's one committee working for him. Now, these are secret committees. The other are called the Plumbers. They're supposed to stop the leaks of the secret information. So their job is secret. Their surveillance and break-ins. So they're going to figure out what information is leaking, tighten it up so nobody knows what's going on with the administration. And the CREEP, C-R-E-E-P, they're going to do whatever dirty things they have to do to get Nixon reelected. And Nixon, these are two groups he created. Okay? So over time, these two groups work together and they begin spying on Nixon's political opponents, which would be the Democratic Party. Okay, Watergate. Okay, Watergate, it's a building called Watergate. And it's where the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, it's their office building. It's where they're working out of. And Nixon's Republican, okay? So what happens in 1972, members of both groups, the CREEP and Plumbers, they break into the DNC in the Watergate building. What they wanted to do was plant listening devices and gather up information. They were caught during the break-in. So Nixon did not order the break-in, but he did order a cover-up. Okay, so he didn't personally say, "Hey, go break in," but both groups were created by him for that purpose. And but what he did do was, once it happened and once they got caught, he covers it up. All right. So the break-in is 1972, and the cover-up starts in 1973. So the Watergate investigation starts to grow. Nixon fired some of his top aides to protect himself. Investigators discover that Nixon had secretly recorded conversations in the White House. So when they asked for the tapes, Nixon refused and claimed executive privilege, the idea that the president can keep certain information private. So this is going to make many Americans more suspicious. So the Supreme Court, 1974, they ordered Nixon to hand over the tapes. And when the tapes were released, they show that Nixon had helped cover up the Watergate break-in. So he's going to face impeachment, which means he's going to be brought up on trial and removed from office. So instead of facing impeachment, instead of going to trial, he quickly resigns in 74 so that what he does doesn't come out. And that's what happens. He just resigns and it's done. So the name Watergate, like I said, it comes from, it's in Washington, D.C. It's a building called Watergate, and that's where it gets its name. And it was the National Democratic DNC's headquarters. Okay, and down there's a picture of your plumbers. All right, the American Indian Movement. This is Native Americans trying to fight for their equality, their equal rights. They take over Alcatraz, which used to be a prison. It's in San Francisco. Well, it's on a little island out of San Francisco. So they're creating a nonviolent movement. They take Alcatraz because they believe that it was their territory and their land. You have 1972, they lead the Trail of Broken Treaties, a cross-country caravan that eventually goes with the March on Washington, a week-long occupation of the Bureau of Indian Affairs building in Washington. They too are doing nonviolent peaceful protest. You have in 73 again, residents occupy Wounded Knee, South Dakota, protesting corruption and tribal leadership and decades of federal neglect. So the U.S. government responds violently, surrounding the town with federal agents, armed vehicles, gunfire, and you have a 71-day siege. Again, they were peacefully protesting, and the government comes with firepower. So this is a moment that kind of defines what they call Red Power and the indigenous rights that they were fighting for. President Ford, Gerald Ford, he's going to take over 1974 to 1977. He'll be president. He has got a few things going on with him. He's going to pardon Nixon, which is going to tick off a lot of people. After Nixon resigns, he pardons him, which means he can't be held accountable and does not have to face any charges, a full pardon. And the country is not going to be happy about it. Ford is going to work on inflation, addressing Congress about the crisis that later will be known as whip inflation now, W-I-N, win. That is going to be his little logo that he goes with. 75, he is going to sign an agreement with 35 nations to recognize post-World War II European borders. This is going to also help economic cooperation, and he's also going to work on legislation that is going to help protect human rights. So we still have the Cold War going on. What else do we got going on? You still have the Cold War, so in Eastern Europe you still do have authoritarian governments. Ford is going to do his best to restore trust in the government and kind of wants to move people past what all the controversy that went on with Nixon. I definitely need more coffee. Okay, oh, this is good. Is this the Fall of Saigon? Oh, we're almost to the Fall of Saigon. That's good. You'll like the Fall of Saigon. All right, let's go back to Vietnam. So in 73, we have the United States under intense pressure to get out of Vietnam. The American public have realized what Vietnam is, and they want their troops back. So in 73, the U.S. government announces to the world that they're ending all U.S. combat operations. They're stopping the military draft, so they're not sending any new people to Vietnam, and they are going to start to bring the soldiers home. In January 27th of 1973, the United States, South Vietnam, North Vietnam, and Viet Cong, so that's all the people involved in the conflict, they're going to sign a Paris Peace Treaty, which created a ceasefire and officially ended direct U.S. military involvement. So under the agreement, the United States was allowed to continue sending military and economic aid to South Vietnam, but American soldiers would no longer fight on the ground. So even after the U.S. withdrawals, fighting between North and South Vietnam continued. Without American troops, South Vietnam struggled to defend itself. So North Vietnamese, they're going to launch major offensive acts in 1975, and South Vietnam is going to quickly collapse. And that's how we're going to get to the Fall of Saigon, which is going to happen April 30th, 1975. So Saigon is like the capital of South Vietnam, and North Vietnamese troops are going to invade. Okay, the Fall of Saigon. This is a good story. Okay, so let's talk about Saigon for a minute. So you have U.S. So Saigon is like, it's a city, and it is heavily defensive city. So it was a safe city. All the fighting, was outward, not near the city. And so you have like a lot of your major military commanders and kind of a command post going on in Saigon. And that's where you have the embassy too. And so you have this war going on for 10 years. So you have people in Saigon who have soldiers who have married, who have had children with Vietnamese. And so you have this intermix of families who are American Vietnamese and who have been together for years. Then you also have your Vietnamese people who have helped and supported the government doing major jobs. And so you have this area, Saigon. Okay, so let's start the story. So what happens is, like we were talking about earlier, we're starting to pull out of Vietnam. So they had plans on how to get out of Vietnam. You've got Saigon that has so many Americans in it because you have for years, like I talked about, the United States had supported South Vietnam. So you have military advisors, embassy workers, intelligence workers, aides, families, everything in Saigon. And then U.S. combat troops, they leave in 1973. So you have thousands of Americans still in Saigon that need to, move out. And they had a plan to move them out because you have an air base there. All right. So, like I said, you had marriages, children, friendships. So there becomes issues. So what happens is they had this plan to evacuate. And the process, they figured out, when did they need to leave. And the DOD, Department of Defense, they create this plan that they'll begin to evacuate when they start to see the movement of North Vietnam, if North Vietnam is starting to, come towards where they're at. And at this time also, it's illegal for the DOD, Department of Defense, to evacuate any Vietnamese civilians to American soil. They can't do that. So if you were an American soldier and you had been married 10 years to a Vietnamese woman and had Vietnamese children, you couldn't take them with you. They weren't going to take them. So what happens is the U.S., they want a clear evacuation. They do not want to have any issues, and this is April 30th. They don't want to have any issues. They're going to wait for when they see the North and when they're told to start evacuating. It should be, over a couple of weeks. And the signal that the North is coming and they should start evacuation is going to be that White Christmas by Bing Crosby is going to play over the American Force Radio. So that's the radio station everybody's listening to. So everybody knew once you start hearing White Christmas, you then follow your evacuation plan for your area. Okay, so this is like a huge debate with historians. So April 29th, the radio announcer announces that the temperature in Saigon is 105 degrees and rising. And then he follows it by playing White Christmas, which is the coded message for everybody to start the final evacuation. And of course, the song's chosen because, like he said, it's 105 and it's in April and we're singing White Christmas. So there's all different accounts. Some people said they never heard the song, that he never played the song, which kind of makes you think, dude, you had one job to play White Christmas. So it's kind of a debate. There's all different people looking back and saying, no, he never played it. Oh, yeah, I did hear it. But anyways, apparently most people don't hear it. And then the North comes in fully and nobody is prepared. So you have thousands of people realizing that they were supposed to evacuate and they didn't. And if you look at the picture This is the embassy, and they're trying to land helicopters wherever they can land. They're landing the helicopters up here on this top part because the North had already invaded all the way on the ground. And you see that people just trying to get up there and get on. So, I mean, it is very successful because they actually evacuate 7,000 people. But you have also the fight of people who are, taking their children, but the children aren't American, they're Vietnamese, and the wife's Vietnamese. So the DOD's refusing it. So what they're going to do, what you're looking at is the embassy wall, or the embassy building, the highest part of the embassy building, because people are being killed below. And so the helicopters are going to fly just a very short way to the water and land on a aircraft taker, the flat boat where the aircrafts take off, and then dump the people and then fly back as fast as they can to pick up more people wherever they can possibly land. And you eventually have where they're trying to evacuate so many people, and then you have other helicopters coming from other areas and trying to land on this boat too. Well, it's not a boat, it's a ship. And to make more room on the ship, the American people are going to push over helicopters off the ship into the water so they can have more space for landing and for people. So this shows you an area. Now you see climbing in the left-hand corner all the Vietnamese people, because these people are going to be killed when the North comes in. You see the upper right, that's the embassy, and you see the North soldiers are already in the embassy. This is one of the boats that you see people just land in and load in. Just a massive, massive chaotic operation with them trying to get as many people as they possibly can. I mean, you see the people everywhere on this boat. So that is the fall of Saigon. And you got to think, dude, you had one job, play White Christmas. Okay, Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter is great. He's actually known more. I don't really remember him as a president, but he's known more for what he does outside of the presidency. He has a very short term, 77 to 81. But he's definitely known for the humanitarian things he does all the way up to his death. He was super old too. Okay, let's talk about his presidency, what you need to know for Star, right? So Carter is a huge, huge human rights activist, and like I said, he was till his death. So his foreign policy challenges, well, let's talk about his domestic. His foreign policy is all about human rights, but his domestic policies is against corruption. So he wants to reduce corruption. He wants to save the planet. He was very much about the planet and human rights. So he believes in human rights for all people. He spent his later years, he was very involved in humanity, Habitat for Humanity, building houses, and he would actually be out there building the houses. So 77, Carter creates the Carter Doctrine, declaring that the United States would use military force if necessary to protect their interest in the Persian Gulf. He also signed treaties. He returned the Panama Canal to Panama by 1999. Probably what he is most known for is 1978, the Camp David Accords. This is a historical peace agreement between Egypt and Israel. And you probably know that, yeah, that's not so peaceful anymore. So that historical peace agreement is what he is known for. And then he is also defined by something that happens in his presidency, which is the Iran hostage crisis, which begins in 1979. And what happens is Ayatollah Khomeini, which I probably said that wrong, he overthrows the Shah. And he storms the U.S. Embassy, and he took 52 Americans hostage. So Carter allowed the exile of the Shah. He allows the Shah to enter the United States. The Shah had cancer, And like I said, Carter's a huge humanitarian. And so he allows the Shah, the person who was in charge, he allows him to enter the United States for medical treatment. Well, this is going to really, really, really tick off the new government. And he tries to negotiate, and he fails. He has failed rescue missions to try and get the hostages released. So the day that Carter leaves office is the day that the hostages get released. So he doesn't get credit for doing anything with the hostages. And like I said, he was most known for, from 1981 to 2024 when he dies, for his incredible humanitarian work. He also does a lot of diplomacy work around the world. Carter is known throughout the world for his humanitarian, for his concern with his fellow man. And he goes everywhere, working, talking, anything he can do to get his voice out there. He actually taught a Sunday school class every day. Like I said, he built houses for the Habitat for Humanity in his 90s, which makes me feel super lazy right now in my 60s. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. He was really, really an amazing human. And he died December 29th, 2024 at the age of 100. All right, so let's see what we're looking at here. There's Carter. There to the right is the Iranian hostages. Let me see. Do we need to talk about anything else? I don't think we need to talk about anything else here. I already told you that he allowed the Shah to come in to get medical treatment, and that really, really made Iran upset. Down at the bottom, this is the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, and you see that they're storming the embassy, and they're going to take Americans hostage that are working at the embassy. And that's going to last 444 days. And again, he, of course, works on trying to get them released, but they do not get released and do a final deal until the day he leaves office and the new president comes in. So the new president will get, all the credit. Okay, this is a cultural slide. So we have got, you see in the top upper left, the video games. Underneath the video games is the Village People, which this is hilarious because the Village People were known for being outrageous and for they really represented LGBTQ plus type people, and then they become to be known in your time period, 2016, 2024, 2016, as a conservative band that plays at all the conservative movements, and it's just kind of hilarious. Okay, so we start to see a very conservative backlash, since we're talking about conservatism, and kind of a new right start forming. And the new right is going to expand in what we call a suburban Sun Belt, and they are going to start really trying to emphasize back to traditional family values. And that's kind of a picture on the right that you see of the typical mom in a dress and dad's in a suit because he just came home from work, and mom vacuums and does all her chores in her dress and what was called stockings and heels. Let's see, what else do we have? Now you're going to have a counterculture, of course. Your movies that are going to come out are MASH, that was a series about the Korean War. Saturday Night Live, that's John Travolta, right there in the center with his little disco. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's Saturday Night Live is the comedy show. This is Saturday Night Fever. You've got Jaws, and also Rocky is in this time period. Saturday Night Live is still actually shown, and it's very satire and always has political stuff in there. Your cars, you had more smaller foreign cars. I think that's the Pinto down there. family life, more women are going to try and enter the workforce. You're going to have color TV. Like you see up there, you have, your video games. So you have, I think Star Wars is starting to come out now. You have Elton John, Queen, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, Van Halen. We still used 8-track tapes. You have Pong is that video game in Space Invaders. And I don't know for sure, but I think Star Wars starts in this time period too.